Test, test. Yep. I can't join city staff for some reason. So.
Test, 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 test.
This is me. And if you did, I would mute your computer. Because you just want to be using this. Okay. Thank you. You want your computer muted. What's that? You just are using your computer for video. You're using your computer for video because that your camera, not on the computer. You'll hear everybody in here. Yep. Well, I mean, we can hear you, but you to talk, like I've got my mic on and I'm about to call us to order and it is 9 o'clock. So I think we're ready to go. It sounds like, and we're live on YouTube. So good morning, everyone. I will call Budget Committee of the Whole to order for today, Wednesday, August 4th. We're continuing to work out some kinks and practice our hybrid meeting format. So we've got some council members here in council chambers, some remote, and continuing to use the Zoom platform for the meetings for this at this point. We've got our standard information up about where on the website to find the agenda and related documents. Let's go to the public participation slide next. Thanks. And continuing the same practice, if you're a participant in the Zoom meeting, you can raise or lower your hand during times for public comment. On an iPhone or Android phone, you can click more to do the same. If you're on a landline, you can use *9 to raise or lower your hand. city council voicemail that's always available and digitizes the message and goes to all council members. It's 406-552-6012. And the city council email that goes to all members is council@ci.missoula.mt.us. We will move into roll. And would you mind calling roll?
Stacy Anderson.
Present.
Mirta Becerra.
Present.
John Cantos.
John's going to be absent today.
Right, thank you. Heather Harp.
Present.
Jordan Hess.
Present.
Gwen Jones.
Present.
Julie Merritt.
Present.
Jesse Ramos.
Present.
Amber Sherrill.
Present.
Sandra Vasica.
Present.
Brian Von Losberg.
Here.
And Heidi West. Let's see. Looks like Heidi is.
Not seeing Heidi yet.
Oh, you know, she. Let's see.
Oh, she just joined?
Yeah, she
Right.
just. So
I think
Heidi,
echo was probably
she
from your
just joined.
computer not being muted.
All right, so we have 11 council members present with 1 absent.
Okay, thanks. We have, let me see if we have minutes to approve. Doesn't look like we have attached minutes, so no minutes to approve at this time. So we'll continue. Oh, go ahead.
Excuse me, Brian, I'm sorry, there should be some minutes attached from the meeting from last Wednesday.
I'm not seeing them attached.
You're not seeing the attached. Okay, we'll go ahead and
We'll
attach.
just, yeah,
for
we'll
next.
attach them to the next one and we can do both.
Okay, sounds great. Thank you.
Yep. I am happy to take public comment on items not on our agenda related to the budget process. If you are a participant in the meeting and you'd like to provide public comment on items that are not on the agenda for today, go ahead and raise your hand. And I'm not seeing any, so we will move into our scheduled agenda items as part of the budget process today. And Lee, do you have any introductory comments?
We are going to be hearing from Community Planning, Development, and Innovation today. All of their documents have been uploaded on the website for folks to be able to review. If you navigate to the budget and FY22 preliminary budget, they're listed by date and at the bottom. And that's everything that I have. Thank you.
Great, thanks, Lee. And that, yeah, and I appreciate you guys adding per the request that hyperlink to the FY 2022 preliminary budget is on the referral on the agenda right under committee business. And you can also find it by simply searching City of Missoula draft fiscal year 2022 budget. That'll take you pretty much directly there. With that, Erin, am I turning it over to you?
Yes, good morning, Erin Pahan with the Office or with Community Planning, Development, and Innovation. Let me get my slides going here. Okay.
Erin, I'm guessing this is on the budget website. Is this the CPDI BCAL presentation?
Correct. All the information that you'll hear today is on the City of Missoula's budget webpage under Community Planning, Development, and Innovation.
Great. And for public, that's the 4th item down under August 4th. Today's date is this presentation. Thanks.
Fantastic. So again, Erin Pahan with Community Planning, Development, and Innovation. I'll be presenting today with Montana James, our Deputy Director of Community Development, and Kirsten Hands, our Business and Finance Manager. And then we'll also have other team members, primarily Lavelle Means, available during the Q&A section as well, as a large part of what we'll be requesting and talking about today involves some big work around code reform. So today we'll talk briefly about our department and our upcoming fiscal year revenue projections. Then we'll spend some time talking about our key accomplishments and FY22 goals by division, both our community development division and our development services division. Lastly, we'll review our new funding requests and talk about how these align with the city's key priorities and strategic plan. We want to start today by talking about our mission, because in CPDI, everything we do ties back to our mission and to the broader mission, vision, and goals of the city of Missoula. So whether we're building or completing a building inspection, working on a historical preservation registry listing, or responding to a code compliance violation in our code compliance team, we do it in an effort to promote our mission of equitable growth and a resilient and sustainable community. This either comes through the creation of innovative programs, policies, and planning in our community development division, or through the efficient and responsive application of code and the delivery of services through our development services division. And more often than not, a combination of both across the entire department. As you all know, CPDI is a new department created through the realignment of services across departments that guide growth in our community. More specifically, it was the result of a merger of the Office of Housing and Community Development and Development Services. This realignment and merger has resulted in a strong mission-driven department that has the capacity to tackle some of the most complex issues facing our community. Our department's strength lies in every single member of our team, but I do want to take a few moments to highlight our management team. This team has done incredible work in the last year to solidify our department's culture and management philosophy, which really is grounded in servant leadership, or the commitment to focus on the needs and the growth of our team. As you'll see throughout the presentation today, our philosophy not only serves our team, but serves the entire community through improved services, better recruitment and retention, and increased outcomes. So many of the faces on the screen are familiar to you, and others are likely new. We'll look forward to you getting to know them and others throughout the department in the course of the coming year. And this slide is much too small for any of you to see on the screen and in detail, but we wanted to provide it because we also wanted to introduce you to our full team, where our strength lies. We currently have 52 team members across both divisions, including our administrative team. We've worked hard over the last year to fill positions and build capacity. And as you'll see here, we have very few vacancies. This capacity building also included 6 internal promotions, which we want to highlight because it really demonstrates our commitment to creating strong career ladders across our teams and our functions, not just within our department, but within the city. And I am going to turn it over to Kirsten Hands to talk to us a little bit about our FY22 revenue projections.
Hi, good morning. I'm Kirsten Hands, the Business and Finance Manager with CPDI. This first slide represents our revenue projections for FY22 by percentage of total revenue. These projections look at past revenues and take into account new requests for FY22. Since the departmental realignment, the majority of CPDI revenues comes from grants and sale proceeds held previously in the former Department of Housing and Community Development. This is projected at $4,237,138 for FY22. This includes one-time contributions requested for the Affordable Housing Trust Fund, as well as federal grant funds that pass through our department funding work in the community. The next largest revenue category is licenses and permit fees, projected at $3,116,902. The license and permit fees category includes building and business licensing, among other types of licenses and fees. The next largest percentage is tax revenue, projected at $2,584,987. CPDI also receives smaller portions of revenue from intergovernment transfers, for example, planning mills from Missoula County. This is projected at $690,242 for FY22, and charges for services, which are projected at $360,120. The charges for services includes much of our land use review fees And this is a category where you anticipate an increase in revenues to fund increased capacity in CPDI through our recently amended development fee schedule. And I think that's it for revenues. I will hand it back to Erin.
Thank you, Kirsten. And I know you all know Kirsten well as our former deputy city clerk, and we are thrilled to have her join us as our new business and finance manager and all the skill and expertise she brings to the process improvements we have underway. So now we're going.
It's nice to see you. Our loss is CPDI and the community's gain.
Thank you, Brian. That's kind.
We are going to now jump into providing some accomplishments and look ahead by division. And we will start with development services. So our development services division includes our land use and planning teams. So those that engage in current planning, development review activities in our department. Our building and inspection team, which engages in building inspection and a variety of other functions, ensuring that development in our community is safe. And our code compliance team. And our code compliance team is a really interesting team. They work not only across our department, but across departments across the city, supporting and working to bring folks into alignment with code and ordinance, whether it's a parks code and ordinance or police or fire or zoning code. And so they're not only instrumental to our division, but to the entire city. So we have some really exciting things to share with you today in regards to our development services division. As of June 30th, which is a 6-month look into the year, CPDI has issued permits for the construction of 655 rental homes in our community. These numbers include 2 large projects, the Trinity and the Bellagio. However, they include many, many more small projects scattered across Missoula. We've issued a smaller number of permits for duplexes representing 8 homes and for single dwelling units, which is typically a traditional detached home at 115. In total, in the first 6 months of this calendar year, which is how we track our development numbers because it better aligns with the building season, we've issued permits to build 844 much needed homes in our community. You'll note on this graph that that exceeds all development in the prior year by 288 homes and even more in 2018 and 2019. And this shows little signs of slowing down. I can also happily report that in addition to these 844 issued permits for homes that are now underway in construction in our community, we have another 103 permits that have been reviewed and approved in our system and are merely waiting for payment to be issued to developers. These will add an additional 91 rental homes and 12 single family homes to the numbers that you see in this chart in the next month alone. And construction of large land use projects that underwent development review in the prior fiscal year, including the multifamily component of McNett Flats, which is several hundred rental homes, ongoing phases of Hellgate Villages, and the Broadway Lofts, are not included in these numbers, and those permit reviews are currently underway. These numbers are even more startling when comparing them to our mid-year progress last year and in 2019. While we're on pace with single-family home starts, we do need to place continued focus there. We've seen dramatic increases in the development of rental homes, as demonstrated here. And while many of these projects were in the works for several years, such as Trinity and Bellagio, our ability to review, process, and approve the sheer volume of permits that we had come in this season, ensuring these homes are constructed and available to our community as soon as possible with no delays on our end, is a direct result of recent policy changes that we've made around the prioritization of building permits and increased capacity that was provided to our department through the amended development fee schedule. And most importantly, it's a direct result of the dedicated skill of our current planning, building, and engineering teams who do this review and issue these permits on a regular basis, in addition to our permits coordinators who do the heroic task of bundling and getting these permits out the door.
Aaron, can I interrupt you? I'm going to interrupt you. My apologies.
Yes, please do. Please do.
Those two slides were really important, and you just answered a question with the second slide, but I want to make sure that this is crystal clear to myself and everybody. On the slide before this, thanks, that last column is truly a year-to-date column, whereas all of the preceding columns are full year columns, correct?
Absolutely. So that 2019, 2020, and all columns preceding represent a 12-month, calendar year count for permits issued. The 2021 to date is January 1st through June 30th of this year, which is what makes these numbers so exciting and startling.
Yeah, exactly. And that really then you provided the thing that I was anticipating next on the next slide, which was a true mid-year to mid-year comparison for, looks like the last, 3 years, this year, and then 19 and 20. Okay, thanks. I just wanted that to be absolutely clear to everybody.
And while we're celebrating, continually celebrating those numbers, we aren't ignoring the progress that we need to continue making on the single family front. The good news is that we're seeing incredible subdivision, annexation, and rezoning activity that is paving the way for new single-family homes. We admittedly shifted focus from land use review in the early part of the calendar year to make more progress on building permits, the progress that we just shared. That doesn't mean that we haven't been engaging in that land use review. We've just been putting more time in our current planning team towards building permit review. However, with the added capacity of additional planners, we can now shift more focus back to land use review and keep the pipeline of new homes moving. Even with our increased focus on permitting in the last few months, we still saw tremendous activity in 2021 around land use review. This included processing 4 major subdivisions, and this represents 494 single-family lots, 8 multi-dwelling lots, and commercial lots, and 1 civic lot. We also processed 8 final plats, and the difference between that creation of a subdivision and a final plat is when we process those final plats, we know that those homes are going to start construction very soon. Whereas with the creation of a subdivision, those could be phased and those home creations could be several years out. So 8 final plats representing 66 homes, 11 multi-family lots, so rental homes, 2 commercial lots and 1 civic lots, as well as 3 townhome developments. So we're going to see those homes start and come on the market soon. We also had 7 rezones, 7 annexations into the city, and 36 subdivision exemptions that will bring more homes to our community. We also processed conditional uses, Board of Adjustment applications, and design review board projects, which support both residential and business projects across our community. So we have more work and more exciting things to do in the coming fiscal year. This comes in the form of several key focus areas across the development service division, including launching comprehensive code reform, which council heard about more in detail several weeks back. It also includes looking at our permitting process and making software upgrades in our Acela program to better serve the development community and our permit reviewing teams. It includes clarity in development review processes. How can we make things more streamlined, more concise, and more clear to the people who are engaging in these processes? Expanding our code compliance team. You all know the heroic work that Charmel and Long do on a regular basis, but we simply need more capacity in that area to adequately address and work to resolve code compliance issues in our community, many of which are directly tied to health and safety issues like urban camping or safe structures across our community. Project tracking protocols. We can't track our progress towards our outcomes if we don't know where we start. And so we're focusing heavily on creating good project tracking across our department. And then lastly, looking at some new legislation from this year's legislative session at the state level around recreational marijuana and expedited subdivision code amendments and the work that we need to do there. Some specific private development projects that we are excited about in the coming year include the Missoulian Rezone and Redevelopment Plan. That's a very important project in the Downtown Master Plan, and we're eager to see that move ahead. We have several annexation, subdivision, and form-based code projects in the new Setupkane area that are promising and show excitement for significant housing in the area. We have large subdivisions and pre-development in South Missoula, as well as our much talked about Scott Street redevelopment. We also have new exciting projects that are bringing us diverse housing types that our community hasn't seen before, like the senior group living project on 6th Street that council recently saw. And as an aside, you'll notice in this slide and several slides throughout that our the work of our community planning team, which is formerly referred to as our long range planning team, is captured both in the development services division's work plan as well as the community development division's work plan. And that's because their work really flows across our department as our macro level planning team. It includes supporting work like broad-based code reform and those legislatively driven code amendments, along with growth of our historical preservation programs, support for our Office of Neighborhoods, which we'll talk about in a minute. And with that, I am going to turn it over to Montana James to walk us through some of the accomplishments and the year ahead for our Community Development Division.
Thanks, Erin. Good morning, everyone. So we can go to the next slide, Erin. Thanks. Over the past fiscal year, like a lot of other departments across the city, our staff and the Community Development Division had to mobilize to respond to the COVID pandemic while also managing their usual duties. So in fiscal year 21, our grants team administered over $700,000 in emergency COVID funds to support Missoula's non-congregate shelter caseworker who worked with individuals in isolation and quarantine in the community. Those funds also supported the expansion and provision of emergency winter shelter from November through April to provide a safe and warm space so that residents did not have to sleep outside in the dangerous and inclement weather. And those funds also supported an additional sanitation support for our local congregate shelter, as well as increased outreach worker capacity to reach residents experiencing houselessness to support with COVID prevention. The grants team also administered nearly $1.5 million in community development block grant and home funds. And those funds worked towards the construction of new homes through the Trinity Apartments, which Erin has mentioned. They also supported the preservation of existing affordable homes at a community land trust property, the construction of the YWCA's Meadowlark Family Housing and Domestic Violence Shelter, which came online earlier this year, and the provision of housing programs that supported over 1,500 Missoula households and financial renter and homebuyer education for another 1,100 Missoulians in the community. In fiscal year 21, our Reaching Home team helped distribute over $37,000 through the Missoula Centralized Housing Solutions Fund to support residents struggling to pay housing and utility costs. That team, in collaboration with department leadership, also supported the development and execution of a master lease agreement for the Trinity Navigation Center, which really lays the groundwork for the eventual opening of that space upon completion of construction, which should be in early 2023. And this navigation center will be the first of its kind in Missoula. It will be a space where Missoulians struggling with housing instability and houselessness can come at any time, day or night, to get connected to resources and the services they need and receive individualized help in creating a plan to get into stable housing. Our climate action team continued their work towards reaching community and municipal zero waste and clean energy goals. And with council's support, they invested $35,000 in statewide advocacy and technical work to help us achieve our adopted 100% clean energy goals. A regional and statewide approach is particularly important in this work, where our success as a community heavily depends on agencies and partners that work across the state and the region. And as a quick summary or a different look, I wanted to share a little bit more about the big picture of the funds that the Community Development Division administered to partner organizations and entities across the community in fiscal year 21. In our division, we have some incredibly talented staff who develop policy and implement policies and plans. And we also support larger community efforts to tackle some of Missoula's most entrenched problems. Because of that, we have staff who are very skilled at bringing in federal funds and administering federal funds in the community in order to leverage our local funds invested. And with those funds, we're able to support community partners who are on the ground doing that direct service work and organizing in the community around these issues. Between federal funds and local funds committed through the fiscal year 21 budget process, we invested nearly $3.5 million in housing and shelter for Missoulians, nearly $500,000 in arts and culture, almost $300,000 in social services for our residents. And in the areas of climate action, economic development, and race and equity work, we administered $100,000 in each of those areas to local organizations and initiatives to support their work. In all, we brought in a federal funds match of $4 for every $1 of local funds invested in these areas over the last fiscal year. So in the upcoming fiscal year, the Community Development Division has a similarly ambitious slate of projects targeted towards the city's strategic framework goals around community safety and wellness, community design and livability, economic health, and environmental quality. In the area of environmental quality, our team will focus on presenting our updated baseline municipal and community greenhouse gas emissions inventories, continuing to track our progress towards our carbon neutral goals. These inventories allow us to check in on where we are and target our internal and municipal priorities for waste and carbon reduction, in addition to supporting community-wide work to reduce emissions and waste. We will also continue to support statewide work to reach 100% clean energy goals and community goals to reach zero waste by 2050. In prior fiscal years, the city invested heavily in developing smart and ambitious plans for climate action, and we now have some really great plans and goals in place. And we're turning towards focusing on implementation and focusing on holding ourselves as a municipal government accountable for reaching those goals. And we're really excited about the team that we have in place to achieve that over the next year and beyond. In the area of community design and livability, we'll facilitate historic registry listing for key sites in the community and work to grow that historic preservation program. Our neighborhoods team will continue to implement their neighborhood assessment recommendations, similarly building and growing that program and increasing engagement. In achieving both economic health and safety and wellness goals, our housing programs team will continue to work to build out the full spectrum of housing services and housing options that our residents need through 3 separate efforts this year. First, we'll focus on supporting implementation of a continuum of shelter options for our neighbors experiencing houselessness and housing instability. This work includes both establishment of actual sites in the community for our neighbors to stay in addition to providing necessary services and resources to help folks move into more stable homes. Second, we'll continue to operate our HUD housing programs and the local Affordable Housing Trust Fund to support the provision of housing services and the construction of more affordable homes. And third, we'll establish our formal affordable housing incentives program to spur additional partnerships with the development community to increase construction of dedicated affordable homes in the community. I'll hand it back to you, Erin.
Thank you. So as you can see through the demonstration of our look ahead for both divisions, we have some pretty ambitious goals in the coming year, but we feel they are also incredibly achievable. It's the work that simply needs to be done, and we have the teams in place to do it. So from a department-wide look, we also have some specific focus areas and projects and plans underway. These include ongoing staff training and retention. We have an amazingly strong team, and we need to continue to challenge and grow and support that team to retain those folks. And then also recruit as we need to with retirements and do some really good succession planning around that. We want to engage in improved or look at improved engagement and outreach as well. How are we sharing information with the community? Land use and growth across Missoula is one of the most important areas for our neighborhood councils and for others right now, looking at how we grow and how we grow equitably. So making sure that we're engaging and looking at the types of conversations that we're having with our neighborhoods and our broader community about that. And then also focusing on justice, equity, diversity, and inclusion work. You heard from Donna Gockler about the city's direction and goals in that area, and we want to be a strong supporter of that work, both in the planning and implementation stages. Some specific projects and plans include overhauling our website. One of the first things we need to do, both from a clarity and access to information perspective, as well as engagement and outreach, is make sure that information is easily accessible to the broader community on the work that we're doing and the projects that we're reviewing and engaging in. We're also looking to digitize our microfilm and historic documents. So just some cleanup work to ease process for our staff and for the community in terms of getting access to those types of documents. We want to implement performance management systems to help our team identify areas for growth and to support them in that growth. And then also integrate LEARN recommendations from the LEARN audit that's currently underway. We're getting great information about how we communicate, how our policies and our procedures impact our community, and especially BIPOC members of our community. And so learning thoughtful ways to integrate the recommendations that come from that report. So with that, we're going to move into a conversation about budget enhancements and new requests that council has before them. Before we go into those requests, we want to talk about the framework that we use to review and as a team decide on what our priorities for the next year are, both in funding and in goals that you've heard a little bit about already. So key in that was looking at all of those projects and requests through the City of Missoula's key priorities, which are achieving organizational excellence, access to quality housing, investment in community safety and wellness, and investment in our built and natural environments. And these key priorities really provide us kind of a one-year snapshot or more targeted focused work plan that is derived from the strategic plan, which is the guide that we'll be using for the next several years in our work. So with that, we will move into our new requests. So the first area falls under achieving organizational excellence. All of the new requests that we've made to council under this umbrella, we feel are necessary to support the broader city's efforts towards organizational excellence, and then on a more targeted basis, our individual departments. Our first request in this area is for an ARPA grants administrator. This position will invest in the successful distribution and administration of ARPA funds that are coming to the City of Missoula and provide resource to leverage those funds through new grant opportunities. And that's a key part of this position. We don't just want to effectively invest the funds that come directly through ARPA. We want to leverage, as Montana pointed out with our other grant funds, if we can leverage $4 for every ARPA dollar, we can make that money go much, much further. And our grants team has a strong track record and history of being able to do just that. I want to note that that request has no impact to the general fund, that position will be fully funded through ARPA dollars themselves. Our next request in this area is for a performance appraisal tool. This is an ongoing request, and this does come from the general fund. This performance tool will supplement the annual budget in support of the implementation of a formal performance appraisal for our building inspectors unit, union, and our planners union. So it's important to also note that this tool and this process was part of recent union negotiations. And so we are required to provide this to both of those two unions. And lastly, looking at increasing we have one more after this. Second to last, looking at increasing our building department's baseline budget for software upgrades and telephone service upgrades. So this will invest in contracted upgrades for several of our software platforms that will assist us with process improvements that aim to improve clarity and transparency and consistency and efficiency for both the development community and our planners and our permit reviewing teams. This also has no impact to the general fund and will be funded 100% through the building fund. And our last request in this area is for that code compliance officer that we talked about previously to support Charmel and Long in the work that they do across the broader community. It will increase our ability to respond to and mediate complaints regarding city code and ordinance. This position will also be funded through the building fund and so has no impact to the general fund. So in the area of achieving organizational excellence, our total requests are $315,341. Of that, $114,000 and change will be one-time requests, and $200,000 will be ongoing requests. The general fund reliance for all of these requests is $3,200, with the remaining coming from either ARPA funds or through the building fund. Next, we'll move on to access to quality housing. We have quite a few requests in this area that both provide us the ability to create the infrastructure that we need to continue to achieve our goals in this area, or provide us actual tangible investment to do so. Our first request in this area, which you've heard some about already, is comprehensive code reform. The total project cost is $850,000, and we're asking for a year one request of $425,000 in one-time funds, and we'll be bringing an additional request before council next year for the remainder of these funds. So these dollars will support a consultant-driven comprehensive code reform effort that's aimed at reducing barriers and promoting equitable development. And as you'll see, this effort really addresses goals in all 5 areas of our strategic plan. And so it's a key project that is essential to the city's ability to achieve our goals. The next request is for funding for the Affordable Housing Trust Fund. The total request in this area is $2.7 million, 2.6 of which is a one-time request and will come through ARPA dollars. 100,000 of which is an ongoing request from the general fund and is a part of the commitment that the city made through resolution when the Affordable Housing Trust Fund was developed. These dollars will invest in the creation and preservation of affordable rental homes for purchase, or affordable homes for rent and for purchase in our community. The next request in this area is for an Affordable Housing Trust Fund coordinator. This is a great place to be in. The Affordable Housing Trust Fund has been incredibly successful due to the work of Montana James and Emily Harris Shears and the Affordable Housing Oversight Committee, which we now have in place, and the hundreds and hundreds of stakeholders that supported that process. We have much work to do to get these funds out the door and to continue bringing in new funds and leveraging them in the same ways that we are our other grant funds at the city. So to do that, we need more manpower. This request also doesn't impact the general fund, and this position, like Emily Harris Shears' position, will be paid through the proceeds of the Affordable Housing Trust Fund. We have 3 additional requests in this area, the next of which is a reaching home evaluation and strategy development. These funds will evaluate the Reaching Home program in the Missoula Coordinated Entry System and craft the next strategy for Missoula as we work to end houselessness in our community. This evaluation is a long time coming. We're in year 7 of our 10-year plan, and we know the landscape has changed dramatically. It had changed dramatically before COVID, and now, of course, in the midst of, and hopefully soon in the aftermath of, it will change dramatically again. So it's time to press pause, to look at what we've achieved, to look at how the economy has changed, our service provision climate in Missoula has changed, and to make sure that we remain on the right path. This will be funded through ARPA dollars, so has no impact to the general fund. The next request is for a plan examiner. This request will increase capacity in the building department to ensure timely review of residential building permits, removing barriers to housing supply. Through the recent development fee amendment, the approved development fee amendment, we funded capacity in our other teams, our engineering permits and plan examination team, our current planning team, but we didn't fund capacity building in the building department plans examination team because that can be funded through the building fund, which already existed. And so we waited for the budget season to bring this request, and this request will not impact the general fund, nor will come from those development fees that we already discussed. This will come from building fund reserves that we already have on hand. The last request in this area, and you'll notice this request is grayed out, a little lighter text, because this request was not recommended for funding in the mayor's current budget. This is for short-term rental identification services and will include the investment of contracted services to perform annual monitoring and assessment of short-term rentals, providing us the data required to create informed policy solutions around short-term rentals. We did a lot of research with the support and guidance of Councilwoman Merritt and others into cities across the community that are doing this work, and talked at length with a firm that has been working with the city of Bozeman for quite some time to provide that good data that a community needs to know how many short-term rentals are in a community at any given time. How are those trends changing? And how does that information inform how we proceed with policy decisions around that?
Aaron, is that a good place to pause for a moment?
Yeah.
I see Julie with a question, and others, if you do, go ahead and queue up, and I have a couple as well.
Thanks, Brian, and thanks, Aaron and Montana, for all the information. As always, you guys just really break it down for us. I guess with the short-term rental item, did we look at, or were you able to confirm whether or not that is a cost that could be paid through ARPA funds? And I guess I recognize that the mayor's proposed budget didn't propose this item for funding, but I do feel like it's really important to have this information. It's a concern that a lot of people are expressing to us, and without good information to make decisions on, we're just in the dark. So I guess I'd like your thoughts about how important you think it is that we pursue this.
Yeah, that's a great question. We have gotten an indication from at least one firm that we've talked to that cities are using ARPA funds for this type of service due to its direct link to housing and economic development. And so I think there is potential there. I don't have a concrete answer on that though, but I believe others are using it, which tells me that some eligibility exists. We're strong proponents of data, right? We need to know where we are to know where we need to go. And so I do think that there has been a lot of conversation around short-term rentals. We have had a lot of anecdotal information provided from community members who have been impacted. I think there's some fear that short-term rentals are eating up housing stock in our community, and we just don't know what we don't know. And so I think this could be a great opportunity for us to get that baseline information and to determine where we need to go. I think there are various ways to do that as well. It could be through a shift from ongoing services to maybe a one-time look at this and working with a firm to do that kind of point in time assessment and look at some trending for the last several years. The request that we made is based on a preference or based on the modeling from other communities that this is an ongoing monitoring and assessment service on an annual basis. And so I think there are a couple of ways we could approach it. If council and the mayor's budget are not supportive of adding that ongoing expense to the general fund at this point in time, we could look at a different approach that might be a one-time expense as a start to get that data and to assess where we're at.
Thanks.
Yep. And I had a very similar question, but I think you answered it. I think this is important data to collect. And I just realized I'm not the co-host right now, and I can't raise and lower hands.
I'll go ahead and make you the co-host.
Okay. Thank
Sorry
you.
about that.
No worries. Aaron, could you go back a slide to the trust fund and just remind me and others the 100,000 ongoing? Oh, that's what happens when I accidentally activate a key thing in my pocket. The distinction between the 100,000 ongoing and the 2.6 million to the trust fund, that distinction is because of the availability of the ARPA funds, and then also our commitment, and it's expressed through the trust fund policy at the minimum level each year. Is that correct?
Yeah, that is correct. Montana, would you have anything to add to that?
Yeah, I would just add, you're correct that the 100,000 ongoing is that minimum commitment in the resolution that accompanied the trust fund ordinance. The 2.6 one time also includes the dedication of revenue from property sale that we anticipate this year. So it's part ARPA and part of the sale of city-owned property that would be dedicated to the trust fund.
That's helpful. Would it be possible to just circulate that detail after the meeting sometime this week of what the breakdown is of the 2.6? As you just mentioned, I would be interested in various components for that you just described.
Yeah, of course.
Okay.
And Montana, is that detail provided on the budget request that is linked to the BCAO website?
I need to go back and pull it up. It is in one way, and I might be able to describe it better kind of outside of that budget form as well.
Okay.
Great. Yeah, that's a good point. It likely is, but any clarity on that would be helpful. Other questions from council members? Amber.
So I'm curious if you, this is great, by the way. I love the format of this. It's very easy to follow. And I think actually Brian asked one of my questions, but if you go back one slide, if you would. Okay, thanks. The comprehensive code reform, you've got the one-time expenditure for 25. Are you just timing wise, would that be the following year? Can you talk about that and just a little more about where that funding is coming from, please?
Yeah, absolutely. So it is likely a 2 to 3 year project, but we are looking for phase one funding, essentially $425,000 this year. And then we will be back before council with an additional request for $425,000 next year. It is important to note that we do need the full funds of $850,000 to get this work done. However, that cost can effectively be split into 2 fiscal years and still provide us the ability to contract out and get that work done. So we can split the cost, but we do need to know, I guess we need to have a shared understanding that the work can't be completed without knowing that full amount of $850,000 will be required to do the work.
Julie.
Sorry to double dip. And I guess my question is maybe for Lee. I do that new requests and tax scenarios spreadsheet that you put out at the beginning of the budget season is a tool that I kind of rely on to help track all of this information. And I guess what I'm seeing, and I understand that this is an evolving process, but what Aaron and Montana have just presented to us doesn't really match up completely with what's on that spreadsheet. And I wonder if we can get an updated version of that spreadsheet. It just leaves my brain confused when I try and keep track of all of this.
Very understandable. We are working on getting that updated with the latest information, and we'll get it out to council, I believe this Friday, so that folks will have the latest information, including documents for next Wednesday's BCAO as well.
Thank you so much. I appreciate all the work that you guys do.
Thanks, Lee, and thanks for tracking that, Julie. I've appreciated your attention to that. That is a critically important thing as we go through and track areas where council may amend importantly. So, Heather.
Thanks. Aaron, I don't know if I heard your answer correctly, but with the code reform, with those dollars, would those be coming from the general fund, or is that ARPA money as well?
Yes, those will be general fund dollars. And just for council and the broader public, everywhere on the slideshow where we don't specifically note that there will be no impact to the general fund, it is a request from the general fund.
Perfect. And then if I may have a follow-up to that. Aaron, this being the larger ticket item out of the whole list of requests that you've made, it causes, I think, every one of us to pause. But I'm wondering if you have any ballparks in terms of what your return on investment for this $850,000 would be in the form of additional construction for housing that would come online, and so that we have a good understanding, does this investment pay off for us, and how?
That's a fantastic question, and a relatively complicated one. So I won't try to extrapolate return on investment right now, but we can do some research into that. I think at the end of the day, it really comes down to the fact that we simply can't achieve the goals we've even set without doing this. And so if we want to achieve our goals, knowing we need 1,000+ units in our community on an annual basis, and knowing we need a different type of home in our community, that our code just simply makes it incredibly challenging or impossible to build today, we can't achieve our growth goals without comprehensive code reform. And so that is just our baseline knowledge. The do nothing scenario, I think, is a scenario that no one is willing to accept. Very few of us are willing to accept at this stage, because we know we will not achieve our goals under that scenario. But an actual tie to number of new homes created, or economic development, or increase in market value of development, I think would be difficult to get to, but we can definitely do some research into that.
And just point, I think this is noteworthy. That's the price tag of 2 of our median home prices today. If we invest in just 2 of those, we can get a lot more done. So thank you.
Yeah, it's a good reference point. I don't see additional council members queued up, but I do have a member of the public that's had their hand up patiently for a while. So let me go to Kenzie. Kenzie, you should be able to speak now. And if you could keep any comments to 3 minutes or less, that'd be great.
Yeah, of course. Thank you all for letting me speak. I hope the yard work that's happening outside isn't too distracting. I just wanted to also express support for funding the research into the short-term vacation rental situation in Missoula. I think Aaron said it best. Like we can't know exactly how to address the problem until we know exactly what the problem is and how far it expands, how large it is. And I think that, just going on to Airbnb and VRBO sites and seeing that just the people who have listed their addresses as within the Missoula area is upwards of 400 houses, or at least units, not houses, but units. And And a lot of people on these sites don't list their addresses until you apply for a short-term vacation rental. And also, there are other ways that people list their short-term vacation rentals that aren't Airbnb and VRBO. And so like doing this research, I think is really important because there are hundreds, possibly far more than that, of units that are serving a purpose, surely, but you know, with the number of people who are housing insecure being pushed out of our community by skyrocketing housing prices and lack of housing availability, housing stock. I think this is a really worthwhile endeavor, and I'd love to see some money put into that research. And that's all I have to say.
Thank you very
Also,
much.
thank you.
Yeah. Thanks for the comment.
Of course.
And no problem with noise outside. It was just fine.
Brilliant.
Okay.
So are we ready to, I have a few more slides.
Yep.
Yep. Okay. So we'll keep going. So to summarize this area in access to quality housing, our total requests are around 3.3 million. Of those 3 million are one-time requests. And well, I'm realizing right now that math isn't lining up. So I need to double check those numbers, but 174 as ongoing for a total investment of 3.3 million. And the general fund reliance is $525,000. And so that represents, as you pointed out, Councilwoman Harp, the code reform work, as well as that $100,000 by resolution for the Affordable Housing Trust Fund. And so our last area of new requests is in investment in community safety and wellness. And this area includes many of the requests that are directly related to recent recommendations made by Adrienne Beck and her team with Incident Command. Others represent work we have been engaging in for months with the provider community in Missoula. All are representative of our ongoing partnership and collaboration with Missoula County in addressing these issues. So I'll move through the details of these requests, and then we'll talk a little bit more about how these fit into our short, medium, and long-term goals. So the first request in this area is for a mobile care team and system-wide infrastructure. The total project cost is a little over $1.1 million, and the request to council is $565,000 of one-time funding. The remaining cost of this program will come from Missoula County, and this will be split evenly between the two entities. This request will create necessary infrastructure, including site coordination, service coordination, a mobile care team, and shared security to serve programs across the system. The next request is for a safe camping option. The total project costs here are $321,000, with half of that coming as a new request to City Council. So this request will establish a safe and secure outdoor camping option as part of our continuum of services, addressing the safety of those living outdoors, as well as the broader community. Our goal here is to provide a location that will offer 30 campsites, which is roughly equivalent to what we know is being utilized in the highest kind of peak usage of the Reserve Street encampment. And next is a request for an expansion of the temporary safe outdoor space program with a total cost of just under $1 million, half of which is coming as a new request. This funding will relocate and expand the very successful temporary safe outdoor space program, which offers a fully staffed and service-rich temporary housing option for those who are seeking a connection to permanent homes. They're ready and eager to move beyond homelessness and to engage with the level of services that folks need to remove some of those barriers. Our goal here is to double the current capacity of temporary safe outdoor space by providing 40 hard-sided structures that will be weatherproof and can serve individuals safely year-round. All three of these requests will be funded through ARPA dollars and will have no impact to the general fund.
Aaron, on that quickly, is it correct? The total project costs and the total request this time, and the fact that this is all ARPA money, these numbers in total request for this year represent half of those total amounts because of the 2-year cycle for the ARPA money. Is that, did I butcher that enough?
These, let me see if I can get at that. These numbers request the costs for year one. So will be year one costs in the 2-year cycle. And so we would be coming to council asking for additional funding to maintain these programs next year. And then for programs that had a need to continue beyond ARPA funding, we would be working with Missoula County to identify sustainable funding sources when we exhaust our ARPA resources.
Thanks. That last part was the key part that I was really trying to articulate. Let me, a couple other questions here. Stacy?
Thanks so much. Yeah, I mean, thanks for asking that question, Brian. I'm having the same when looking at this. Yeah, I see it says no impact to general fund, that it's ARPA, but for the example, when you utilize or when you explained the mobile care team, you said that that was the total project is 1.1 million and the total request is 565 and the other half is coming from the county. Is that for all 3 of these? Because this is what it costs for the year project and we are going in collectively both with, because I know county got ARPA funds, we got ARPA funds. And then or is it only for that? I guess I'm having a hard time tracking how what the difference between each project and the funding. If some of them are just, this is a 2-year project, we're funding this year one-time money and we'll come back for the ARPA funds next year, or if it's county coming in supporting. So this is the total year one project costs. Does that my question make sense, or did I make it more confusing?
Let's get that clarified by Erin.
Yeah, so these are all in the total project cost is likely what's confusing here. So that it should say total year one project cost, and the total request to council is half of that. So these do all reflect a 1-year project cost. The important piece of that, especially as it applies to the safe camping option and the temporary safe outdoor space expansion, is that year 2 costs will not look the same. So much of what is included in total project costs for year 1 includes some capital expenses, the purchase of a hard-sided structure, the extension of sewer and water to a site when we identify or locate that site. Those are one-time expenditures. There will be continued expenditures to operate those sites, and that's what we would be coming back and asking council for of year 2 ARPA expenditures in the next budget season. We have an idea of what those numbers will be, but we don't have a firm sense of that because much of creating a new program is right-sizing and figuring out, do we have too much security baked in, and can we dial that down a little bit? Do we not have enough supportive programming? And so we'll be right-sizing those programs through year 2. And I have a slide, a few slides up that shows how these fit into our broader short, medium, and long-term goals, and how long we think we'll need these programs too. Many of these we're talking about temporary options, so we will want to be thinking about sustainability when we exhaust ARPA funds. But we also at this stage don't yet know if these programs will need to continue on in perpetuity after ARPA funds as well. And so some of that is going to come as we dig into the provision of services. We work with our provider communities on determining outcomes, engaging success, and figuring out when and if these programs are ready to be retired.
Can I have a follow-up, Chair?
Yes.
Oh, great. Thanks. So I appreciate that. And I would like some more context on that, because where, all of these seem like really necessary, good uses of ARPA funds, I am mindful that ARPA money is one time, we have it and we have a few years to spend it, but to stand up these programs and making sure that we then are mindful of year 3, 4, and the impact that it could have on general funds. But my question is, could you explain a little bit more about the mobile care and system-wide infrastructure and how I would like some more context, especially in regards, it has a similar name to the mobile crisis unit. I know, and it has a team associated, so I'd like to know how those are different and complementary.
Yes, and if possible, I actually have a slide that digs into that, a few slides up, if we could hold
Great.
that.
I will wait patiently for that slide. Thank you.
All right. So moving on to the remainder of requests in these areas, the next request is for Poverello Center supportive housing and shelter expansion. The total project costs in this area are 3.5 million. And we submitted a request for 2.5 million, but want to be clear that of that, we're asking for a city contribution through ARPA funds of $834,000. That 2.5 million, we propose be split 3 ways between a city ARPA contribution of 834,000, Missoula County ARPA contribution of 834,000, and then we'll be going to the Missoula Redevelopment Agency with a request of funding in that same amount. This funding will invest in the acquisition and renovation of a hotel to relocate permanent supportive housing for veterans, a program called Housing Montana Heroes, from the Poverello Center's main campus, thereby expanding the shelter's capacity. The Poverello Center recently received a grant of $1 million from the Veterans Administration to do this based on the desire to move veteran supportive housing programs from a congregate model. Currently, there are 2 veterans per room in the Poverello Center to a non-congregate model in light of the ongoing pandemic. And so this would allow the Poverello Center to move those 20 veterans from those shared rooms into individual single rooms through an acquisition and renovation of a motel in our community. The goal is also to hopefully identify a hotel or a motel that provides additional units that we can make available as permanent supportive housing, potentially for our FUSE population or for an expansion of a medical respite program. We're talking about a variety of needs in our community that could be met in that fashion. The secondary benefit is this would increase square footage of the Poverello Center that could now serve other populations or expand their shelter footprint or their shelter bed capacity. And so we get a double benefit from an investment like this. And again, this will be funded through ARPA dollars, unlike the other programs that will have secondary or additional year expenditures. This is a true project with a defined amount of money. The operation of the facility would be driven by the Poverello Center. And so the city isn't making a commitment to ongoing operational funds for this project. The Poverello Center has that financial mechanism in place through their contracts with the Veterans Administration. We would be supporting the acquisition and renovation only. The next request is for ongoing maintenance of our expanded emergency winter shelter approach. So we are requesting $311,000 in one-time funding. The remainder of that funding has been requested by the Poverello Center to Missoula County to maintain the expanded provision of emergency winter shelter due to the ongoing economic impacts of COVID and the growing needs in our community. And that provides us a capacity of 125 shelter beds. We know we need this expanded capacity this year based on the ongoing pandemic and the CDC's recommendations to keep capacity capped at shelter facilities to allow for adequate spacing. We don't know if this expanded need will continue into the 2023 winter season or 2024. And so this is one instance where we do need to take this a little bit on a year-by-year basis, depending on need and what is presenting that year.
Jordan is, yeah.
Just a question. I'm wondering if you're seeing any, or if we need to start considering any kind of emergency summertime shelters as to provide respite from extreme heat. Do you have any thoughts on that?
That's a really good question. And, you know, to speak articulately on it, I think I would need to check in with our providers. I think growing heat and wildfire smoke are presenting new issues. Well, not new, but relatively new in their consistency issues in our community and things we're talking about at length in our climate action work as well. We do know communities like those in the Southwest have maintained heat weather shelters throughout the years. And that's a part of their normal continuum of service. We don't see those as consistently provided in the Rocky Mountain West, the Pacific Northwest, or even the Midwest. The weather-related shelters tend to be more winter-related as opposed to heat and smoke. But I think it's something our community needs to be continually talking about. And that's something we can check in with our provider community on and get back to you.
Thanks, Ann.
So our next request in this area is for Poverello Center shelter and supportive programming support. And we're requesting $211,000 to invest in the community-wide expansion of the homeless outreach team while ensuring ongoing and high quality shelter service provision continues. Homeless outreach is going to be a really key component with the safe outdoor camping option and with the expanded temporary safe outdoor space. Building relationships with individuals who have been living outdoors for a very long time is a key part of bringing them into the continuum of service and helping make that long-term connection to homes that we strive for with every single individual that we work with. And so we know we're going to need to have a really robust homeless outreach approach to be successful in those areas. And all three of these requests are funded through ARPA dollars as well. And then the last request in this area is a neighborhood improvement grant expansion. And this one is grayed out as well because this request was not included in the mayor's proposed budget. We are asking for a total request of $20,000 of ongoing funding from the general fund to increase grant funds to make projects more financially feasible and to increase the impact. Our neighborhoods improvement grants have struggled to be effective because that dollar amount has been very flat for some time, and it's simply not enough money to get a lot of these projects done. And so we think that through an expansion, we'll see a more robust application of those funds, and will provide our neighborhoods the ability to engage in some of these small projects that really make a positive impact in those neighborhoods, like the installation of community gardens or art projects or upgrades to playgrounds. And so, so that is a request that we feel like supports those strategic plan goals listed. So the total requests in this area are around $2.5 million. All of the funded requests, and we're just addressing the recommended funded ones here, so not addressing the neighborhood expansion grant, are one-time requests. Looking at the total overall investment of $4.4 million for the 2.5 that the city is bringing to the table. And so we're leveraging a great deal of funding, both from Missoula County and from private grant sources that are coming to these projects. And so we're doubling our investment at the city of Missoula through those leveraged funds. And then I do want to highlight two additional requests that the city of Missoula received. One from Arts Missoula for community-based funding to expand Arts Missoula by adding a part-time director of public arts position, as well as a request from the Community Food and Agriculture Coalition to provide SNAP funding to pay for the Double SNAP Nutrition Dollar program. These requests were not in the mayor's final approved budget, and we don't feel that these requests, while being incredibly beneficial to our community, they don't directly tie to our key priorities or a current goal of the city of Missoula's strategic plan, although they, as I mentioned, are incredibly important goals for our community.
Thanks. Let me go to Stacy.
Thanks so much. Is the, because I know the SNAP program was something we spent a lot of time talking about in the legislature, very disappointed in how they handled that. Are those something that would be ARPA funding eligible?
Yes, I do believe that request would be ARPA funding eligible.
Great, thanks.
So moving on to some of that detail that Councilwoman Anderson requested around the mobile care team and around specifically some of these requests. So this graphic aims to provide more context around budget requests related to shelter services and connection to homes. We see this work as a phased approach and one that should be based on meeting urgent health and safety needs first and foremost. It's no coincidence that this graphic mirrors Maslow's hierarchy of needs for those familiar with that, which mandates that basic needs have to be addressed before individuals or a broader community can move forward with addressing more complex needs. Our phase 1 recommends addressing basic health and safety and includes the creation of that mobile care team, building the system-wide infrastructure necessary for an effective response. This step will create a defined set of shared services designed to increase collaboration and sustainability across the system based on the needs on the ground today in relation to COVID, as well as needs moving into the future as we have more homes for people to access and we can make that connection to home more powerful. So these services may occur across sites in the system today and across sites that we aim to create in the future. So the city and the county will invest in the creation of these shared services that again are designed to increase that collaboration and sustainability across the system. We envision that these services may occur at the following sites: the relocation and expansion of temporary safe outdoor space, additional safe camping options, which we're talking about providing the opportunity to address illegal urban camping in areas like the Reserve Street encampment and the West Broadway Island, but have an option for those folks who are simply not ready to come indoors. Expanded supportive housing, the emergency winter shelter operation, the Poverello Center's main campus in the area adjacent to that, as well as the future Trinity site. So what will the mobile care team provide? Care coordination across sites. We currently have mobile services like medical services, behavioral health services, peer support, housing support, which is often referred to as housing navigation and retention, how we connect people to housing. And then when that connection is made, how we make sure that those folks retain that housing, investing in that long-term success. So we'll have a care team coordinator that will work with all of the amazing service providers and nonprofits in our community, and will ensure those services are coordinated, they're aligned, folks are collaborating and communicating well. And we have had conversations with Partnership Health Center, and they are very interested in serving as that care team coordination entity and aligning those services across all of these sites. The shared services will also include site operations where relevant or where it makes sense. This would include the development and capital coordination for these new sites, the safe outdoor camping options, the expansion of temporary safe outdoor space, logistical coordination across sites for things like hygiene and safety related issues, bathrooms, hand washing sinks. And very importantly, it will include site and adjacent neighborhood security. And so worked into that dollar amount, we have a robust security presence to provide support to the organizations providing this service, while also providing support in mitigating against some of the impacts to the adjacent neighborhoods. And so we have roughly 3.5 FTEs 24 hours a day to support of security presence to support a variety of these sites, whether it's these 5 or 6 or more. Some sites might require security presence of one individual 24 hours a day. Others might be able to float between the sites, but we know that this is an important part for our community partners to address some of those impacts, to make sure that we have a supportive presence for the individuals who are accessing those services, to make sure that they are safe and supported in whatever site they're accessing, but also that we're addressing the broader community impacts on businesses, parks, trails that we sometimes see as well. So just to capture, it really is that basic health and safety need that we're addressing in phase 1. And we don't necessarily know that all of the services that we are recommending we tip up in phase 1 will carry forward beyond phase 2 and phase 3, because we know that our ultimate goal here is always connection to homes. So looking at phase 2, moving to that next line, our phase 2 recommendations aim to better support and stabilize those served in our emergency system through the expansion of supportive housing options, including permanent supportive housing, as well as the growing successful temporary safe outdoor space program. And the reason why we are recommending funding for phase 1 and phase 2 during this ARPA cycle is we know that those phase 2 activities need some lead time, right? We need to work with the community to locate sites. We need to start with the capital development of those programs. And so while we're addressing those basic health and safety needs immediately within the next 60 to 90 days, we'll also immediately start on that support and stabilization, helping to move those folks from that urgent basic provision of service to that next level, connecting them to the support that they need to move towards permanent housing. And then lastly, phase 3 focuses on connection to homes. We know we have this urgent basic need that we have to meet today. We also know the only real solution to homelessness are homes. And so we can't forget that that has to be our continual ultimate goal, and that we're going to achieve that through the opening of the Trinity Navigation Center and Permanent Supportive Housing Program, and through continued investment of funds in the Affordable Housing Trust Fund and the continued investment of federal grant dollars, so that we're constantly developing and working towards the construction of new affordable housing in our community.
Thank you. Julie.
Thanks. So, Erin, in this mobile care team, is this kind of incorporating the 3 housing positions that we've talked about earlier this year with the housing navigator and the landlord liaison, and I'm forgetting the third one, but you know what I'm talking about.
Yes, this does. And so we have been talking with the providers about providing some more sustainability to the overall system. And that came through an interest in funding some specific positions. And so we worked with Partnership Health Center and others on what that might look like based on what the need on the ground is today. Previously, we were heavily investing in housing navigators and housing retention specialists. And while the individuals doing that work are incredibly skilled and talented and doing heroic work, the reality, the unfortunate reality is we just don't have homes today to connect people to. So what we did is we took a look at what is the need today. And based on what the need is today, what does the system truly need? And working with those providers, we came up with this model. The good thing is as the need shifts, this mobile team can shift with it. And so we may not need as much homeless outreach in the future, or we may not need as much of a security presence in the future, right? If we're able to retire some of these other services or minimize these other services, because we're connecting more people directly to permanent homes. And then that mobile care team can shift and those professionals can start to provide more housing connection and housing retention services and less street outreach and security at those basic health and safety provision options. And so our goal is to create a team that can flux with the need. And so we aren't really locked into a specific service at a specific location, but that we have a team that can grow and change and shift with that need.
I appreciate that. Brian, could I have a follow-up?
Sure.
So one of those positions that I was particularly interested in was the landlord liaison, given that the city doesn't have any control. We don't have any authority to enforce control over landlords. And that program sounded to me, I don't exactly know how effective it was being, but it sounded to me like a good opportunity to do what we could, which is to ask people to partner with us on a voluntary basis and provide some support for the landlords with the risk that they take in housing some of the individuals that they perceive to be high risk to rent to. So I'm wondering if that position in particular will be maintained under this mobile care team if it's funded.
Yes, and thank you for asking again. I failed to address that in my last response. And so the landlord liaison may or may not be a component of the mobile care team. We're really going to lean on our provider community to help us fine tune what these care teams should really look like. But the landlord liaison position is being fully funded for the next year through the Missoula County funding funding matrix. I think they're still defining what funds, but our understanding is that position is still going to be funded. And so we will not lose that position in our broader continuum. And we'll figure out what the interplay of that position with the mobile care team will be.
Excellent. Thank you. I'm really glad to hear that.
Yeah, as am I. Julie asked the same question I was going to ask, so thanks for bringing that up and the response. And I appreciate over the weeks the conversations that have taken place to get to this point. I'm really grateful for that. I want to go, Tom Benson in the audience has been very patient. And Tom, let me get you on here for public comment. And I know we have more, Aaron, my apologies.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yep.
Okay, great. Thank you very much. Tom Benson with Arts Missoula. And you'll know that Arts Missoula has a contract with the city to assist with several programs that benefit this community. Our global and cultural affairs, education and community outreach programming is one of them. Spark Arts Ignite Learning, the Kennedy Center for an Initiative for Equity and Access in Arts Education. We also work on economic development through the arts, which includes participation in national economic impact studies, the promotional cultural tourism, and the administration of the Public Art Committee with a 10 hours a week public art coordinator. And what I'm requesting in this upcoming budget is an increase of $35,400 to fund a half-time public art director. Right now, the city funding is for, as I said, a quarter-time administrator for public art, but an administrator, as you know, is not a director. And a dedicated director can drive more initiatives, create more projects, and conduct more fundraising. And this is crucial as we emerge from the pandemic, combined with all the growth in downtown construction and an increase in tourism, as we have seen this summer. A major theme running through the downtown master plan is enhancing public spaces. Throughout the master plan, there is reference to more public art. And I just want to quote from the approved master plan: "Art enhances public spaces and plays an important role in many communities through the country's history. Art is not only representational of a community and its culture, but it also invokes placemaking. Big Art celebrates a place's culture and is iconic. It is unique and belongs solely to the community. Public art can take on many forms as well. It can be a standalone piece, a building, a neighborhood, or intertwined into everyday infrastructure to transform a street or intersection." For 30 years, Missoula's public art has been the result of a volunteer committee with a constant change of committee members. They have been responsible for many wonderful projects, including 73 traffic signal boxes and more than 50 public art pieces throughout the city. But it is a volunteer committee, and the potential for more and bigger public art pieces will be greater with a dedicated staff person. Why is art important to Missoula? A couple of statistics. In 2020, Missoula was named number 10 in the nation's top most creative small cities by the Western States Arts Federation out of Denver. In 2019, Missoula was named the 4th most vibrant mid-sized city in Arts Vibrancy Report by the National Center for Arts Research at Southern Methodist University in Dallas. The last Arts and Economic Prosperity Study by Americans for the Arts in Washington, D.C. Listed the nonprofit arts sector in Missoula as being a $54 million industry, 3 times as large as other communities our size. All of these national studies are conducted from somewhere else, but they highlight Missoula and its rich arts and cultural landscape. A more robust public art program will keep our local artists living here in Missoula as citizens and community members rather than leave for better opportunities in their field. There are also numerous online articles and resources that describing how important art is to our mental health, particularly during this last pandemic. So there are economic reasons, mental health reasons, livability reasons for a stronger public art program. As Missoula grows and is growing, and it is becoming more of a cosmopolitan city, it seems that this would be a natural part of our evolution. In today's world, more and more people can choose where they live, and they work remotely. Wherever they live, they pay taxes, buy homes, send their children to schools, and help build the community. So as more and more people are choosing to live in attractive places, public art is one of those things that makes a place attractive. And a director would be a good investment for the city of Missoula. I want to stress finally that this budget request is not for current or additional Arts Missoula programming, but for a city position funded through our ongoing contract. Arts Missoula would be acting as the pass-through for an employee working with and for the city, city's Public Art Committee. This would be a similar arrangement to the one we currently have with the quarter-time Public Art Coordinator. There are others who support this in Missoula. I know there are letters from Linda McCarthy at the Downtown Association and Barb Nealon at Destination Missoula, who are supportive of this, as well as others. And I also know that Kathy Olson from the Public Art Committee is on the call, and she might have some words to say as well. And I'm willing to take any questions council may have about this position. Thanks very much.
Thanks. Thank you, Tom.
With that, I just have a few more slides I'll breeze through, and then we can open it up to broader questions. So this next slide addresses or just provides a visual of how these budget requests and direct investments flow into these phases. So again, that phase one, which is basic health and safety, looks at the expanded emergency winter shelter, which we know we'll need next year. And moving into Trinity, we aren't sure what that need will look like, hopefully moving to a post-pandemic state. Poverello Center shelter and programming support for the expanded homeless outreach teams, the mobile care team and system-wide infrastructure, and safe camping options. Those flow into our phase two, support and stabilization. So once we are able to make sure that we're keeping folks safe, we're keeping folks alive, we're addressing that basic human need, we provide that support and stabilization to move folks closer to a connection to home. That includes the Poverello Center supportive housing creation and shelter expansion, and the expansion of the temporary safe outdoor space program. And then lastly, connection to home through investment in the Affordable Housing Trust Fund and the future operation of the Navigation Center in that area. So hopefully this represents that our plan is comprehensive. It addresses the urgent need, but never loses sight of our ultimate goal, which is to provide a place everyone can call home. And then in summary, to close us out, the areas of budget enhancement that we have requested are listed below with the total amounts that we're requesting in each of those three areas. The total reliance on the general fund is quite low for all of these requests. I know that has created some concern about long-term sustainability. And I think that those are conversations that we're going to have to continue to work through with Missoula County and with our partners in the community. But it's also a tricky conversation because much of what is proposed today is a direct result of the fallout and the change of needs from the pandemic. And that is a bit of an unknown world. And so we know we have an urgent need on the ground today, and we can't ignore that need. But we don't know how that need will grow and shift in coming months, especially tying back to the incredible numbers that we were able to share around our progress with housing starts. That as we create more affordable housing in our community, as we create more homes in our community, the reliance on our shelter system and the inability for folks to connect to permanent homes will decrease, and that will change the needs in our community. And so it's difficult to project what we'll need next year, let alone what we'll need 2 years and 3 years from now. The Reaching Home evaluation will help us in that work. But our goal has to continue to be connection to permanent homes, knowing that we have a short-term need to bolster our shelter system. Our long-term goal shouldn't be the permanent bolstering of our emergency and our shelter systems, because that alone is not a solution to homelessness. And largely looking at our leveraged funds, hopefully we have shown in our work and will continue to show in our work that investments in our department and in these programs will pay off 2, 3, fourfold in terms of the additional funding that we can bring in to support this work. So with that, we would love to answer any questions that council may have.
Thanks very much, Erin, and thanks for putting up with me whipsawing you back and forth a little bit with public comment. And I want to quickly thank you. The format I found to be really helpful and useful. Everything from, the regular boxes to the grayed out boxes, and the indications of differentiation between general fund support and ARPA. So I appreciate that. Amber.
Yeah, thanks. First of all, I would echo what Brian just said. I find your presentations really easy to follow, and a lot of my questions have been answered by my colleagues already. Will you put up that summary for me again?
Mhm.
Yeah, so, I just want to highlight the reliance on the general fund. I know that you said that, but that is an amazingly small number going directly to being taxpayer citizens for what we're going to be able to achieve. And I do understand the concern about how do we do this long term, but the bottom line is we have an opportunity here that to make a difference, and I don't think we should pass it up. So I guess I don't really have a question. I want to highlight this summary and recognize that this is in what has been a very, very difficult couple of years. This is a little ray of hope and opportunity, and I'm glad we're going to be able to take it. So thank you.
Thanks. Process check. Is there any other presentation material today that we are supposed to be going through?
Mr. Chair, I have a short presentation on the equity related requests.
Thanks. I thought that was the case. I just want to double check from a time management standpoint. So before we get to that, any other input questions from council members? And while we're on that, Kathy Olson, I think you had also wanted to provide public comment, and let me get that. You should be able to now. Kathy, you might need to unmute yourself. If you can unmute, then you should be able.
There we go. Apologies for that. Want to thank you all for taking the time to listen to both Tom's and my request for funding for an executive director position for the Public Art Committee. I'm currently the chair of the committee, have previously been the longest term vice chair, and am the longest term committee member for the committee. And as many of you know, the Public Art Committee was established by ordinance in 1985, reaffirmed in 2002, and once again in 2015. We have long been the leader in the state, in the region, and locally in laying the groundwork for public art throughout the community. To date, since that 1985, we have fostered the acquisition of nearly 20 artworks, all of them major. And this is excluding as Tom mentioned, over 70 traffic signal box art projects that we have worked with Montana Department of Transportation on. All of these have projects, and it's been really exciting for the committee because not only have they fulfilled our mission of providing the city with excellent public art, but also fostered collaborations with multiple local, regional, and state public and private entities, particularly local businesses, neighborhood councils, local organizations, and really most importantly, the artists that live within our community. And again, just to reiterate, for these 35 years, this committee has been essentially staffed by volunteer committee members appointed by you all, as well as the mayor. And they have dedicated literally thousands of hours to the success of the committee and the projects. What has become really more apparent again in this world of Missoula is that public art is becoming more and more desired and more needed. And exciting for us is that The inclusion of public art has been included in our comprehensive plans, our neighborhood plans, and as Tom mentioned, most recently, very important in the Downtown Missoula Master Plan. All of these plans, which council has, of course, significantly supported. We believe the value of public art is clearly cemented in the Missoula community by its history and hopefully the future. Today I'm speaking for the committee, the 9 members of the committee, in enthusiastically and literally wholeheartedly supporting the belief that at this point, we really look forward to and need a consistent, dedicated leadership. As Tom mentioned, we've had changing committee members, and that happens through any of the city's committees throughout the years. But we do believe at this point, a part-time executive director can and will grow the committee art activities, assist with the community planning processes that each of these have called for. It will help us with consistent growth in our services, projects, and of course, funding. I think many of you know much of our funding is through the private sector, but we also do have the Percent for Art program. And then of course, do apply for public grants. It'll allow for increased collaboration with not only our city departments, but strengthen the relationships in the private sector with organizations and businesses. As an example of city partnerships, we're currently working with the planning office, the bicycle pedestrian program, the city parks and rec, with the parking commission, with the Missoula Urban Transportation District. So we have these ongoing projects with city departments that we're called upon, and really do enjoy that collaboration with them and ultimately the projects that result. We also believe that, again, importantly, an executive director will strengthen opportunities and public art opportunities for artists within the Missoula community, which again is called for by a lot of the people as well as our planning process. As a committee, everyone works extremely, extremely hard. We currently have multiple projects that we are undertaking at the present time, the traffic signal box program. We're working with the Downtown Partnership on the celebration of our Indigenous peoples. Erin had spoken about inclusion, and we are also working on some projects right there with the Northside community on one of the historically significant churches in Missoula, the first Holy Black Church in Missoula. We have projects going with, as I mentioned, the Missoula Urban Transportation District and the Bicycle Pedestrian Program, all of which are the beginnings of even more projects with those 2 entities. So we are sincerely hopeful that the council will support the addition of an executive director. Again, this is a position that truly will benefit the city and its residents in helping us grow and maintain the public art program. So with that too, I'm available to answer any questions.
Thanks. We don't have time in the format for questions, but appreciate the public comment. Pardon me while I manage process. I want to get to Dale's presentation and not seeing other council members queued up. I want to quickly comment and a question to Erin. Unsurprisingly, I've mentioned this when we reviewed the one-page budget priorities, as well as the mayor's budget letter that kicked off the process for budget. And it's well known, I'm a fairly fierce advocate around our work in sustainability and climate. The investments in this presentation are incredibly necessary. I don't want my question and comment to cast any shadow around the tough choices that are made for competing needs with the resources available. That said, I remain unconvinced that the investments we're making in the proposed budget match on the climate and sustainability front, match the breadth and scope and ambition of policy expressed by the council over a number of years with our operations internally, with work in the community, with work on a statewide basis. Those are expressed through our municipal plan, through our 0 by 50 plan, through our 100% clean electricity resolution joint with the county in collaboration with other communities. All of that said, which is my soapbox, my question, and if it's not possible to answer briefly here, and if it's more nuanced, I would be happy to get this information offline. I'm curious about the, I think I know this, but I want to make sure that I understand the limitations around ARPA funding relative to any of our climate and sustainability work. I don't believe that there is much of a window, if any, there. Can you confirm that, Aaron, or is that a more nuanced answer? Or Dale, who has his hand up.
Good afternoon. There are ways I think that we could get some sustainability initiatives into ARPA, though not directly. But those are there. But I do want to comment on while you did not see a big new asks for sustainability initiatives in the new requests, we do have what I believe are significant investments happening in sustainability through the city. And we're really with our new sustainability coordinator, Lee Ratterman, we are moving on into implementation mode relative to a lot of our plans and really focusing inward right now. We are working in earnest on our investment grade audit with McKinstry. We are working, our public works folks are working hard related to looking at their carbon offsets related to many upgrades into existing pumps, solar energy options, and everything to help with that. And with the acquisition of the water utility, it increased our municipal footprint, increased it because of that, but we now have these tools available to do it. So Lee is planning to come back to council very soon with our new baseline of municipal what our municipal carbon footprint looks like, and the goals and the projects we have to help work towards our goals of a carbon neutral municipal operation. So while you did not see it highlighted in this, we are working diligently on that right now.
Yep. Noted. We will put a pin in that. Dale, we've got about 10 minutes. Hopefully that's enough time.
It will be. Thank you. You are seeing my screen okay?
Yes.
Thank you. So as the city and county and our other partner organizations work on our equity goals, there is, and council is considering the equity resolution now. We wanted to highlight the specific requests that are in our FY22 budget today. This is here in front of you is just a summary of that. We're asking for one-time dollars of $150,000 for consulting services, and then continuation of some staff support to the total of $78,000. Want to note that this staff support right now is currently engaged in primarily the equity work we are working on, but it's not to say that this is a dedicated equity person at this time until we get until we formalize our plans through this next year. So just a little bit of detail on what we're talking about, and really related to what we mean when we want to hire consultants to help us with this process. And overall, our goal here is to ensure that the City of Missoula, our City of Missoula government, more closely resembles the community it represents by fostering a notion of equity on everything we do, including our neighborhood councils, all our boards and commissions, our hiring practices, and really throughout our city businesses. And to do that, we need some help with best practices, review and revise our policies, procedures, processes, across the board. The easiest example in my mind is human resources. Are we doing the best job we can relative to recruitment? But then there's also the items related to job orientation and continued retention, and all of those issues all roll into these things. Are we considering equity? And they also then need to identify and establish tools for measuring progress. We need to understand, for continuing the human resource example, we need to, understand, are we meeting goals relative to equity inclusion? And what does that mean? Does that mean our policies are updated, or does that mean we have a management team that reflects our community? All of those type of questions, and we need to answer all of those. And then we also want to be a partner in establishing community engagement. In our participation in the National League of Cities Equity Cohort, we have 5 large partners that we've talked about: county, university, all nations, and Missoula County Public Schools. We want to be all acting as partners. We want to convene other community groups, business interests, other stakeholders, and having some dollars here to help facilitate that as a partner in that would be really helpful. So this is helping with our work on the equity cohort, the audit findings we will have from the Learn audit. This is the funding that we'll use to implement over time. This funding will provide an overall framework that we can work from. And we're not sure exactly what this looks like. Are we going to have a equity position at the city, or are we, what other ongoing programs do we have to have? This is the money that's going to help just establish what those are, and you can see funding in the future. The other thing is, I think it's just important for us to have this lens when we are making decisions. My favorite example is our transportation capital improvement program, where they in their scoring, they created the equity grades to it, and that changed the way they made decisions. And so we need to be able to do that in all of our decision making. So simple as that. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thanks, Dale. And that's a great example in the transportation sector. I appreciate you mentioning that. Any questions, comments from any council members? We have a few more minutes. I've been challenging to our presenters by taking public comment during presentations. Is there any additional public comment? Let's see. Heather, back to you.
Thanks, Brian. Dale, I guess I'd like you to just kind of perhaps address some of the concerns that we've been getting in our email inbox of people who are in opposition to this JEDI resolution. And I don't know if people just think it's based upon race only, but obviously to the point that you've made before, it encompasses so much more when we talk about justice, equity, diversity, inclusion. And I'm wondering how you would respond to those who would oppose this kind of investment in making our community more equitable across the line.
Yeah, thanks, Heather. I will take a crack at that. There is not a simple answer to all this, and we have a long ways to go. I come at this from a personal lens. Growing up as a Pacific Islander born in Montana, I believe I have an interesting perspective on this. Growing up in the 70s and 80s here, but it's really about, to me, is essentially how we are making decisions and how we are and as we set our goals, how we are setting those goals and making those decisions. And what we have to be able to ask ourselves are, in any of the decisions we make, who are the winners, who are the losers, who is at the table and who isn't, right? That is, I think those four basic questions, I think are the types of things that we need to infuse throughout our culture. It's not about providing a specific ability of one group over another. It's that equitable access, and it's to make sure that we have everyone at the table and have the opportunity to be at the table, and we are understanding the intended consequences and the unintended consequences of all our actions. I think it's as simple
Appreciate
as
that very much. Thank you very much, Dale.
Thanks. And in the public, Jane Van Possen, I believe you might have had your hand up. I didn't mean to move off of public comment. Go ahead and raise your hand, Jane, if you wanted to provide public comment. Not seeing any takers there. Last chance. All right. Thank you, Dale, Aaron, Montana, Kirsten, everybody on staff. I appreciate the full level top to bottom that goes, the full effort top to bottom that goes into putting together these presentations and the information. So thanks to everyone involved. And I believe with that, we will be adjourned.